A disabled black woman is violently thrown from her wheelchair by a white police officer in broad daylight, and within hours the video is everywhere. What starts as a routine pharmacy visit spirals into a national outcry, shaking a city to its core. But as protests erupt and the courtroom fills, deeper truths begin to surface. Truths neither side is ready for. Behind every testimony lies a secret, and behind every headline, a question of justice that refuses to stay silent. What happens when the people demand accountability and the system is finally forced to listen? Elisa Freeman hated needing help. She always had. Even now, as her gloved hands gripped the rims of her wheelchair and pushed through the cracked sidewalk near the corner of 5th and Marston, her jaw clenched from more than just the cold. There was a slight wobble in the front right wheel. It had been acting up for weeks, but she hadn't mentioned it to Monique yet. Her best friend would insist on paying for repairs. Elisa didn't want anyone feeling sorry for her, not after everything she had already lost. The pharmacy was just ahead. She passed the laundromat, where Miss Eunice always waved from behind the counter, and the corner bodega with the peeling green paint and a security camera that probably didn't work. These were her streets, her people. She'd been a high school teacher here for 12 years, before the accident, before her spine and half her plans got crushed under someone else's carelessness. "Move, bitch." The words snapped out like a whip from behind. Elisa didn't flinch. She'd heard worse. But when the white pickup truck screeched to a halt beside the sidewalk and the door flew open, something in her gut twisted. Officer Daniel Briggs didn't believe in hesitation. It made you weak. It made you vulnerable. He'd been trained to take command, to not second-guess himself, and he carried that like armor every day he wore the badge. This part of town, it was a powder keg. Always had been. These people didn't respect order. They didn't even pretend to. He told himself that every morning when he clipped his gun into its holster. Today was no different. He spotted her halfway down the block, just rolling along like she owned the damn street. Probably begging for sympathy or causing a scene. They always did when cameras were nearby. Daniel didn't recognize her face, but that didn't matter. The sight of a black woman in a wheelchair on this block sparked something that had nothing to do with duty and everything to do with disgust. He stepped out of the truck, boots hitting the pavement hard. "Hey, you can't block the walkway like that," he barked, although she wasn't blocking anything. Elisa turned her head slowly, eyes narrowing. "I'm not blocking anything," she said, her voice calm, measured. Daniel took 2 steps closer. "I said move along." "I'm on the sidewalk, just heading to the pharmacy." His hand rested on the butt of his belt, not quite at the holster, but close enough. "I said move." "I heard you." Something about the way she said it, unbothered, unmoved, lit a fuse inside him. He looked around. No backup yet, no crowd. Not that it mattered. "Why'd Elisa blinked. "What?" "You heard me. I need to see some identification." She straightened in her chair. "Why?" Daniel exhaled sharply through his nose. His fingers tapped against his belt. "You fit a description. Just show your ID and this'll be over." "Fit a description?" she asked. "What description? A black woman in a wheelchair going to CVS?" He stepped closer, voice low now. "You got a smart mouth, don't you?" Elisa's spine didn't let her stand anymore, but her dignity stood tall. "And you've got a badge you think makes you God." That did it. Daniel's hand shot forward, grabbing the armrest of her chair. Elisa tried to pull away, but the wheel jerked beneath her. A foot caught the curb, and in one violent motion, he yanked. The sound of metal scraping concrete. Her body hit the pavement with a sickening thud. Her breath rushed out as the chair toppled beside her. Pain flared down her hip. Her elbow scraped raw. Gasps rang out. Someone screamed. Bones rose like a field of sunflowers all around them. Monique Taylor had just stepped out of the bakery across the street when she saw it happen. One moment she spotted her best friend rolling up the block. Then suddenly she was on the ground, her chair flipped over like trash. No. Oh, God. No. She sprinted across the street, not caring about the traffic that honked and screeched. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she shouted at the officer, dropping to her knees beside Alyssa. Daniel's hand hovered near his holster now, but not because he felt threatened, because he felt exposed. He could hear the clicks and beeps of camera phones recording. Too many of them. Too late to walk this one back. He resisted. He started. "Resisted what?" Monique snapped. "Walking? She's in a wheelchair, you psychopath." Alyssa coughed, trying to sit up. "I'm okay," she whispered, even though she wasn't. The growing crowd encircled them. Murmurs turned to shouts. "Hey, get his badge number. Call someone. Call the NAACP or the news." He just assaulted her. Daniel's radio squawked uselessly on his chest. He glanced down at Alyssa, who was now sitting up, one palm bloodied, the other gripping her chair like it was the only thing holding her together. He felt the weight of every phone pointed at him. Someone shoved a mic in his face. A local news van had pulled up. "Officer, why did you attack this woman? Was she a threat?" He backed up, palms raised. "No comment. Get back." "I said back." But no one moved. It was too late. His voice didn't carry authority anymore. It carried guilt. It carried rage. It carried a story no one was going to let him rewrite. Alyssa looked up at him through tear-rippled eyes, but her voice cut clear. "I want his name." "I got it," someone shouted. "Daniel Briggs, I got his badge on video." Sirens wailed in the distance, another unit arriving. Daniel stood frozen in place. For the first time in his life, he felt something heavy settle in his chest. Not fear, not regret. Accountability. Two officers pushed through the crowd and took in the scene. Alyssa on the pavement, Monique cradling her, and Daniel looking like a man who knew he had just ruined his life in 10 seconds. They didn't speak. No one did. Not until Jamari, Alyssa's 16-year-old nephew, ran up from the edge of the crowd. He dropped beside her, tears already falling. "Auntie, I saw the video. Are you?" She touched his face, voice soft. "I'm all right, baby." He looked up at the officer, then back down. Then, quietly, he pulled out his phone and hit record. Not on the officer, but on her. "This is Alyssa Freeman," he said, his voice shaking. "She used to teach 9th grade history at Franklin High. She volunteers at the community center every week. She mentors kids, and she don't deserve this. None of our people do." Alyssa whispered, "Jamari." But he wasn't done. "You want the world to know who we are? This is who we are. We're not the problem. That man is." As the paramedics arrived and helped lift Alyssa onto a stretcher, the city watched through screens and live streams and shaky videos posted with hashtags that would burn across the internet by nightfall. Justice for Alyssa. Wheelchairs apparent weapons. Face additional Brig. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of sirens, someone whispered, "This time. We saw it. No one can deny it now." The city had watched a line get crossed. Now it was waiting to see who would step back and who would burn everything down just to pretend it never happened. The first time Alyssa saw the video, she didn't recognize herself. It was the angle. Low, shaky, too close to the ground. A bystander had recorded it in vertical format, capturing her body slamming onto the concrete like a dropped bag of groceries. Her limbs looked thinner than she imagined, her curls flattened by wind and panic. In the frame, Officer Briggs towered over her like a statue made of threat and authority, barking something inaudible, as Monique rushed in screaming. Alyssa watched it in silence, her phone balanced on her lap, chin resting lightly on her hand. Her apartment was quiet, only the faint hum of the fridge and the buzz of her still-charging medical alert bracelet breaking the stillness. The curtains were half closed. She didn't want the light. Monique was in the kitchen, pacing. "Don't read the comments," she warned, setting a mug of tea on the coffee table. "You know better than to—" "I'm not reading the comments." Elisa paused the video. The frame froze just as Briggs reached toward her chair. She leaned back. "You ever see yourself at your lowest from a stranger's lens?" Elisa asked, eyes unfocused. Monique didn't answer. She just sat down beside her, folding one leg underneath the other and resting a hand gently on Elisa's arm. "You're not at your lowest," Monique whispered. "You're still here." That should have been enough. But it didn't feel like it. She had watched the views climb overnight, from a few dozen to a few hundred, then thousands. Then local news picked it up. Then national outlets. Now celebrities were retweeting it. Activists were debating it. The story had moved from a video to a conversation. But not once had anyone from the precinct called her. No internal affairs, no apology, no statement. The police department had posted something generic about evaluating the incident and reviewing officer conduct, the kind of language that didn't say anything at all. That morning, Jamari had texted her 5 links and a screenshot from CNN's homepage. "You're trending," he wrote, adding a red heart. Elisa didn't know how to explain that trending didn't mean anything. It didn't mean Officer Briggs had been arrested. It didn't mean he'd even been fired. It didn't mean she could sleep at night without replaying the crack of her body hitting the pavement in the middle of her own neighborhood. It didn't mean justice. She turned the phone face down and rolled herself back from the table. Monique watched her. "You gonna rest?" "I don't know what that means anymore." "Then let's go make some noise." Monique stood, grabbed her purse, and tossed Elisa a hoodie. "You know what kind of power you've got right now?" she said. "You think that video is the end? Girl, it's just the spark." Elisa hesitated. "I didn't ask to be a spark." Monique raised a brow. "No one ever does." They left the apartment and drove across town, where a community center was holding an emergency town hall. News vans were already outside. A mural of Malcolm X stared down at them from the wall across the street, and rows of plastic chairs filled the gymnasium. Elisa had been here before, years ago, when she helped organize back-to-school supply drives. She remembered placing pencils in Ziploc bags and thinking, "This is how you make a difference." Now, her name was on the event flyer. Special guest, Elisa Freeman. She didn't know who made that decision. She didn't have the energy to fight it. Inside, people turned and stared, not with pity, but with urgency, recognition. Someone clapped, then another. Then half the room stood. Elisa blinked. Monique squeezed her shoulder. "You're the face of this, like it or not." An older woman stepped forward. Miss Jeanette, the pastor's widow, who ran the food pantry. "I saw what that monster did to you," she said, her voice trembling. "We've had too many of them come through this town, but we don't forget. We don't forgive easy either." Elisa swallowed a lump in her throat. "I'm not a hero." "No, baby, but you're ours." Elisa was ushered to the front. A folding table had been turned into a makeshift podium, flanked by folding chairs. Jamari stood near the back with a phone mounted on a tripod, already streaming. A man in a gray suit took the mic. Councilman Reeves, someone she vaguely remembered from a fundraiser years ago. "We are not here just to talk," he said, voice steady. "We're here to act. The Department of Justice has been contacted, and I've spoken personally to Marcus Bell from the U.S. Attorney's Office." That name made heads turn. Marcus Bell had prosecuted civil rights cases in 3 states and had a reputation for going for blood. Elisa whispered, "They're bringing in Bell?" Monique nodded. "That's the kind of noise this made." Councilman Reeves handed the mic to her. For a moment, Elisa just stared at it. The room was too bright. Her hands felt cold. Then she raised it slowly to her lips. "I wasn't going to speak today," she began, voice soft. I didn't think I could. Silence. But if I'm being honest, I haven't been able to stop thinking. Thinking about how normal that day started. Thinking about how fast it changed. Thinking about how a man in uniform decided I didn't belong. She paused. The words were there now, building. I've been a teacher, a mentor, a neighbor, a volunteer. But none of that mattered when he looked at me. All he saw was someone to control, to dominate. And now that the whole world's seen it too, I want to ask something. She looked out at the crowd. What are we going to do when the cameras turn off? The gym stayed quiet, hanging on her breath. Because going viral, it's a moment. But justice? That's a movement. And I don't want your hashtags if they don't come with action. A murmur of agreement swept the room. Elisa felt her voice grow stronger. I'm not asking anyone to save me, but I'm asking you not to let this go. Don't let them say it was a misunderstanding. Don't let them wait this out. She lowered the mic. The applause was soft at first, but it grew. People stood. Some wiped their eyes. Even Jamari looked stunned. Back at home that night, Elisa sat by the window and watched the city breathe. Monique had gone to bed and Jamari had fallen asleep on the couch, phone still in his hand. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Greater than Miss Freeman, my name is Marcus Bell. I'd like to speak with you about what happened. Tomorrow morning. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. Elisa closed her eyes. Viral didn't mean justice. But maybe, just maybe, this time, justice had her number. Marcus Bell didn't knock like most people. He rapped twice. Sharp, controlled. And then waited precisely 3 seconds before reaching for the doorknob. Not to open it, but to let whoever was inside know he wasn't going anywhere. That was his rhythm. Not aggressive, not passive. Calculated. When Monique opened the door, her eyes did a quick scan. Polished shoes, tailored coat. No smile. She stepped aside without a word. Inside, Elisa was already waiting, seated in her wheelchair with her arms crossed over her chest. The morning sun spilled in behind her, casting long shadows across the floor. She hadn't touched her tea. Marcus nodded once. Miss Freeman. Elisa motioned to the seat across from her. U.S. Attorney Bell. He didn't waste time. I'm not here to convince you I care, he said, setting a folder down. I'm here because you're a witness to a federal civil rights violation, and I intend to prosecute Officer Daniel Briggs for it. Monique sat down slowly on the couch behind them, silent but listening. Elisa raised an eyebrow. You've already decided? I saw the footage, the full clip. I've spoken to the witnesses who filmed it, to your nephew, and to the EMTs who were on site. She glanced at the folder. So, that's it? He gets charged and justice happens? Marcus exhaled through his nose. He's not just being charged, he's being made an example. Elisa wasn't sure she liked that phrasing. It made her feel like a prop, not a person. He caught her hesitation. I know what you're thinking, he said, but this isn't about using you. It's about making sure the system finally sees you. Elisa met his eyes. The system's had plenty of chances. It's not blind. It just refuses to look. He didn't argue. That earned her a flicker of respect. Marcus opened the folder. Inside were stills from the video, frame-by-frame captures that showed the moment Briggs reached for her, the instant her body hit the pavement, the panic on her face. He turned them toward her, one at a time. I need you to testify. Elisa stared at the images. You think I'm not going to? I think you don't trust the outcome, he said, without flinching. And you'd be right not to. The department has circled the wagons. They're already leaking stories. About your history, about an old parking dispute you had 5 years ago. They're reaching. Elisa scoffed. Of course they are. They've also quietly reached out to a lawyer. I believe Briggs plans to claim he feared for his safety." She turned to Monique, who laughed bitterly. "From a woman in a wheelchair," she said. "What, he thought she was going to run him over at 2 minutes?" Marcus's jaw tightened. They're going to say anything they can to make this look like a misunderstanding instead of a pattern. Alyssa took a breath. "Then, let's show them the pattern." He closed the folder. "There's something else." She waited. "He's had 5 complaints of excessive force in the past 6 years. 3 were dismissed. 1 was settled. 1 is still open." Elisa's lips parted. "How does a man like that still wear a badge?" "Because none of the prior victims were caught on video," Marcus said. "You were." The words hung in the air, heavy and cruel. After Marcus left, Alyssa wheeled herself back to the bedroom. Monique stayed behind, arms folded, gaze still fixed on the closed door. "You believe him?" she called out. Elisa's voice came faintly down the hall. "I believe he wants a win." That afternoon, Jamari walked in from school with his backpack half-zipped and eyes wide. "They want me to speak," he said breathlessly, "at the protest Saturday." Monique, washing dishes, raised an eyebrow. "Who's they?" "The people from the coalition. Mr. Green from church, a lady from Black Youth Rising. They said my video made people cry." Alyssa appeared in the doorway. "You okay with that?" Jamari paused. "I don't know." She wheeled closer. "You don't owe anyone your pain," she said. "If you speak, do it for you, not for clicks, not for applause." He looked down at his hands. I want them to see what he did. I want them to see you." Elisa reached up and took his wrist gently. "Then say what's in your heart. Say it loud. And make sure you're not asking for change. You're demanding it." Later that evening, Alyssa received a call from Marcus. "We got the green light," he said. "Formal charges will be announced Monday morning. Civil rights violations, assault under color of law, and deprivation of constitutional rights." He didn't cheer, didn't smile. She just said, "Good. But there's more." Marcus added, "We've been approached by someone from within the department, a potential witness. Anonymous for now." "Who?" Marcus hesitated. "A fellow officer. Says they saw Briggs use force in a similar situation 2 years ago, but it got buried." "Buried how?" "Internal report never left the precinct. Complaint never made it to the civilian review board. Classic paper shuffle." Elisa gritted her teeth. "And now they want to talk?" Marcus's voice dropped. "Because of you. Because you won't let it slide." That night, Elisa couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because of fury. She thought about every face she'd seen over the years. Students, neighbors, strangers, who'd been taught to look down, stay quiet, keep moving. And she thought about Officer Briggs, sitting somewhere in his house right now, probably surrounded by advisors, union reps, and family telling him not to say a word. "He doesn't get to be comfortable," she thought. "Not after what he did." Monique found her at the window again, wrapped in a shawl, staring out into the glow of the streetlights. "You all right?" she asked softly. "I keep thinking about how fast it happened," Elisa said. "How normal it all felt, until it didn't." Monique sat beside her, resting her head against Elisa's shoulder. "That's how it always is," she said. "Every fire starts with a spark." Elisa didn't respond, because deep down she knew the fire hadn't even started yet. And the city, it wasn't ready for what came next. The courtroom was colder than Elisa expected. Not in temperature, though the air conditioning blasted from the ceiling vents, but in feeling. The walls were sterile, the chairs stiff. The people seated around her all wore the same unreadable expression. Interest, carefully masked by detachment. Like they didn't want to get too close to the flames, in case the fire jumped rose. Alyssa sat near the front, flanked by Marcus Bell on one side and Monique on the other. Jamari was behind them with folded arms and clenched jaw, his phone turned off for once. This wasn't something he wanted to watch through a screen. Daniel Briggs sat across the room, suit and tie replacing his badge and vest. His lawyer whispered something into his ear, and he gave a slight nod. The man didn't look nervous, just tired. Alyssa hated how human he looked. She wanted him to look monstrous, unmistakably vile. But his face was calm, plain, like a man waiting for his name to be called at the DM. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Judge Evelyn Hart, black, sharp-eyed, and known for her intolerance of performative courtroom drama, took her seat with the practiced grace of someone who had presided over enough tragedies to stop pretending surprise. She glanced at both legal tables and nodded. "Let's begin." The opening statements went as expected. Marcus stood first. His voice was steady, slow, deliberate. "This case," he said, "is about power. Who has it, how it's used, and what happens when it's abused." He walked past the jury, hands behind his back. "You will hear from witnesses. You will see video footage. You will hear in the defendant's own words what he perceived, what he feared, and what he decided." He turned and looked directly at Briggs. "You'll be asked to believe that a woman in a wheelchair, who posed no threat, who uttered no threats, was dangerous enough to be thrown to the ground in broad daylight. You'll be asked to believe that this officer was justified." I pause. "I'm asking you to remember what you already know. There is no excuse for this. None." Then it was the defense's turn. Briggs's lawyer, a broad-shouldered man with too much cologne and a calm baritone, stepped forward. "Officer Briggs is a man with nearly 15 years of service," he began. "A man who has served this city through riots, natural disasters, and countless dangerous encounters." He gestured toward Elisa's side. "No one denies that what happened was unfortunate, painful, but what you will see is that it was not criminal. It was not motivated by race, and it was not, as the prosecution claims, an abuse of power. It was a mistake. A human mistake, made in the heat of a difficult moment." Alyssa inhaled sharply. "Mistake. Unfortunate." It made it sound like he dropped his coffee. The first witness was the woman who filmed the video. Her hands trembled slightly as she took the stand, but her voice didn't. "I was walking back from work," she said, "and I saw the officer shouting at the woman, at Miss Freeman. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was just rolling down the sidewalk." The defense tried to twist her words, asked if maybe she had missed something, asked if she felt she had the expertise to judge a law enforcement situation. "I don't need a badge to know what I saw," she said. "And I saw a cop shove a woman out of her chair." Whispers rippled through the room. Judge Hart silenced them with a glance. Jamari testified next. He wasn't asked to, but Marcus knew the jury needed to see him. Young, articulate, hurt but not broken. "She's my aunt," he said, chin high. "She raised me like a second mom. She's the strongest person I know." He described the video, the blood, the sound of Elisa hitting the pavement, the scream he let out when he saw it. "She's in pain every day," he said. "But you don't see her complain? You don't see her cry? Not even now." He looked at Briggs. But that day, he made her small, like she didn't matter. Then it was Elisa's turn. Monique squeezed her hand before she wheeled forward. Her stomach twisted, her mouth was dry, but when she faced the jury, something inside her steadied. "I was going to the pharmacy," she said. "That's it. I wasn't blocking traffic. I wasn't threatening anyone. I was just going to get my medication." She described Briggs's tone, the way he grabbed her chair, the sudden, violent pull that sent her flying. "I've been in this chair for 5 years," she said, "but I've never felt helpless until that day. He didn't see me as a woman. He didn't see me as human. He saw something to control. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. After he walked away, I was lying on the sidewalk with my chair beside me. Strangers had to help me. Strangers had more compassion in 30 seconds than he did with a badge. Marcus kept his gaze on the jury. One juror wiped their eye. Another stared at the table, jaw clenched. And then, as the afternoon wore on, Marcus called a surprise witness. Officer Tyrell Mason. Gasps. Murmurs. Even Briggs's lawyer looked caught off guard. Tyrell entered the courtroom in uniform, head held high. Black officer, same precinct, same department. Judge Hart raised an eyebrow. "Are we clear on what's about to happen?" Marcus nodded. "We are, Your Honor." Tyrell was sworn in and sat down, slowly. "I've worked with Officer Briggs for 7 years," he began. "I've seen him do good work. I've also seen him cross lines." He told the story of a traffic stop from 2 years earlier. A teenage boy. A similar accusation of resistance. A use of force report that was never filed properly. "I reported it to a supervisor," he said, "but the paperwork vanished. The incident went away." The courtroom held its breath. "I speak now?" Marcus asked. "Because she's not the first," Tyrell said, gesturing to Alyssa. "She's just the one they couldn't silence." Briggs's lawyer objected. Judge Hart overruled. Alyssa looked down at her hands, trembling slightly. Truth was a dangerous witness, but now it had a name. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions, protesters chanted, supporters held signs. Inside, Briggs shifted in his seat for the first time all day. The tide was turning, and no one, not even him, could pretend it wasn't. The courthouse steps were littered with signs. Some read, "Justice for Alyssa." Others said, "No more silence," "Protect, not attack," and "Disabled doesn't mean disposable." Cardboard, wood, cloth. Messages painted with grief and fire, held by strangers who now knew her name. Elisa stood by the tall window on the 3rd floor, watching them gather below. She saw faces she didn't recognize, people she'd never met, chanting in unison for something she used to believe wasn't possible. It was hard to accept being seen this clearly after being overlooked for so long. Even harder to believe it would last. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick. No longer cold, just heavy. It was closing arguments day. The chairs were filled. The hallway was full. Even the overflow room downstairs, with a delayed live stream, had people pressed shoulder to shoulder. Monique stood behind Elisa, arms folded, voice low. "They're with you. All of them." Elisa nodded slowly. "Yeah. But will it matter? They know the truth now. They can't unsee it." Elisa wheeled herself toward the double doors. They opened from the inside before she could reach them. Marcus Bell stood there, sleeves rolled up, face unreadable. "It's time." The courtroom was silent as they entered. Every eye turned. Even the judge watched Alyssa roll to her seat with the kind of respect that wasn't in any law book. Marcus rose slowly, walking to the center of the room with the weight of every testimony, every video frame, every tear, and every silence behind him. "When we talk about justice," he began, "we like to think it's a thing that simply exists, that it shows up when called, like a cab or a pizza." He looked at the jury, scanning each face. "But justice is a fight. It's a decision. It's an action. And today, it belongs to you." He pointed toward Alyssa, not dramatically, but purposefully. "That woman is not a threat. She was not a threat. She is a teacher, a citizen, a neighbor. She is someone who once believed in the systems designed to protect her, until one of those systems tried to crush her beneath its boot." He walked slowly past the defense table. "You watched the video. You heard the witnesses. You saw the pain on her face, the indifference on his. You heard his colleague testify, not because it was easy, but because it was right. He paused and turned back toward the jury. Officer Daniel Briggs didn't make a mistake. He made a choice, and it's your job to make one too. Not out of sympathy, not out of anger, but out of truth. Marcus returned to his seat. The defense stood. Briggs's lawyer adjusted his tie before walking forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we cannot allow emotion to replace reason." He gestured toward Elisa. "Yes, what happened was unfortunate. Yes, it was painful, but we cannot criminalize every incident that causes hurt. This was not an execution. It was not brutality. It was a tense encounter that escalated." He turned toward the jury. "You're being asked to end a man's career, potentially his freedom, over a few seconds caught on tape. Seconds where judgment may falter, seconds where perceptions may deceive." He lifted a paper from the table. "And let us not forget, Officer Briggs feared for his safety. You may not understand that fear, you may not agree with it, but you must acknowledge it." He stepped back. And that was it. The jury was dismissed to deliberate. The room emptied slowly. Reporters filed out first, then court employees, then strangers murmuring prayers or rage under their breath. Alyssa remained seated. Monique leaned in close. "You need a break. Let's get some air." Elisa didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the now empty jury box. "How long will it take?" Marcus shrugged. "Could be hours, could be days. I don't want to wait that long." Monique squeezed her shoulder. "You've waited your whole life for a moment like this. You can wait a little longer." They left the courthouse through the back exit, but word spread fast. By the time they reached the sidewalk, dozens of people were following. Some offered hugs, others simply nodded. Outside, across the street, a candlelight vigil had already begun. Children held battery-powered lights. Elders passed out flyers with Elisa's face and a QR code for court updates. Someone was singing softly. It didn't feel like a protest. It felt like a reckoning. An hour passed. Then two. No verdict. Jumari sat cross-legged on the courthouse lawn, sketching with a pencil and pad. Elisa looked down at the page. It was a drawing of her, but not of that day on the pavement. This was different. She was upright, powerful, her chair transformed into something regal, her arms raised, palms open. "You made me look taller," she said softly. "You are taller," Jumari replied. "They just couldn't see it." Another hour passed. Still nothing. Marcus reappeared around sunset. "They're still in deliberations," he said. "But there's something else." Alyssa braced herself. The department issued a statement. They're putting Briggs on unpaid suspension pending the outcome. Internal Affairs will reopen the other complaints. Alyssa blinked. "Now they care?" "They're reacting to pressure," Marcus said. "They always do when they think they're next." He looked down the street, at the crowd growing by the minute. This isn't just about a verdict anymore. It's about visibility, accountability, change. Alyssa's eyes scanned the scene, people lighting candles, whispering stories, holding up signs that read, "Believe Black women," and "Wheelchairs aren't targets." She spoke without turning her head. "Do you think they'd still be here if the video hadn't gone viral?" Marcus hesitated. Duh. At least he was honest. "But the video isn't what moved them," he said. "You did." Elisa didn't respond. She just sat quietly as the city exhaled. The sun dipped behind the courthouse roof, casting long shadows across the pavement. Inside, 12 people debated the future. Outside, a community held its breath. And at the center of it all, Elisa waited. Not as a victim, not as a symbol, but as a woman who had lived through the storm and dared to believe the sky might clear. Would you like to proceed with Chapter 6, the final chapter? The call came at 9:17 the next morning. Elisa had barely finished her coffee when Marcus's name lit up her screen. She didn't say hello, just answered and waited. "They're ready," he said. 2 words. No build-up, no explanation, just the moment hanging between them like a breath waiting to be released. Elisa looked out the window. The crowd was already gathering again on the courthouse steps. Bigger this time, louder, but more hopeful somehow. The signs had changed too. Now they read, "Listen to her, justice is possible," and "This time matters." She turned toward Monique, who stood in the kitchen doorway still holding a spoon. "It's time." They didn't say anything on the drive. Jamari sat in the back seat, fingers twitching against his thighs as if he were rehearsing something. Maybe another video, maybe just what he'd say to his friends if this went badly. Monique drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting gently on Elisa's shoulder. Outside the courthouse, the air was electric. Reporters formed lines, microphones in hand, cameras mounted, ready to capture whatever history was about to happen. Inside, everything felt smaller. The courtroom was quiet. Not empty, but quiet, in that reverent way people adopt when they know something sacred is about to unfold. Elisa wheeled herself to her usual spot. Marcus was already there, so was Briggs, seated with his attorney, jaw tight, collar buttoned too high. Judge Hart entered a moment later, her expression unchanged. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" she asked. The foreperson, a middle-aged black woman in a blue blazer, stood slowly. "We have, Your Honor." A paper was handed over. Judge Hart scanned it, then passed it back. "In the matter of the United States versus Officer Daniel Briggs," the foreperson read, "on the charge of violating civil rights under color of law, we find the defendant guilty." A sound escaped from the crowd. Not a cheer, not a gasp. Something softer, something like a prayer finally answered. Briggs didn't move. His lawyer lowered his eyes. Elisa blinked, stunned. She hadn't imagined what this moment would feel like because she didn't think she'd ever get to have it. Judge Hart continued. "Sentencing will be scheduled. Officer Briggs is hereby remanded into custody pending further proceedings." 2 court officers approached him. He stood slowly, almost confused, like he'd walked into the wrong room and couldn't figure out why everyone was looking at him like that. They cuffed him. No spectacle, no shouting, just justice. Real, quiet, undeniable. As the courtroom began to buzz, Marcus leaned toward Elisa. "You did this." She shook her head. "We did this." Outside, the crowd erupted as news reached them. Chanting resumed, louder, clearer. Jamari slipped past a reporter and ran to his aunt, throwing his arms around her neck. "They listened," he said into her shoulder. "They finally listened." Elisa hugged him back. Then the reporters swarmed. Microphones in her face, cameras in every direction. "What are your thoughts on the verdict, Miss Freeman? How do you feel seeing Officer Briggs led away in cuffs? Do you think this sets a precedent?" Elisa held up a hand. Not angry, not upset, just calm. "I'll speak," she said, "but not here." She waited until the courthouse steps were cleared and someone handed her a working mic connected to the speaker set from the vigil the night before. The same crowd returned, eyes full of expectation. She looked over their faces. Black, white, old, young, sitting, standing, all of them gathered because she refused to stay silent. She cleared her throat. "I didn't come here today expecting to win," she began. "I came here hoping we wouldn't lose." A few people nodded. "I've been told all my life to be patient, that change takes time, that justice will come eventually. But eventually is a long time when you're the one being pushed." The crowd leaned in. "This wasn't just about me," she continued. "This was about all of us who've been ignored, erased, and injured, by people who hide behind badges and policies and silence. This was about proving that no one is above accountability. She scanned the crowd again. Officer Briggs thought I was small, that I could be moved out of the way, but we are not small, and we are not done. The applause started slowly, then swelled into a wave. Jamari stepped up beside her and raised his phone again. "Go ahead," Alyssa said, smiling. "Let the world hear it." That night, Elisa returned home to find a letter on her doorstep. It wasn't from a lawyer or a politician or a reporter. It was handwritten, folded twice. She opened it slowly. "Mr. Freeman, I watched the trial. I'm ashamed I stayed silent for so long, but you gave me courage. I filed my own report today. It may not mean much, but I wanted you to know you're not alone anymore." "Lacey?" She stared at it for a long time before pressing it against her heart. Monique walked in with Chinese takeout and saw her standing there. "You okay?" Elisa smiled, wiping a tear. I think I am." They ate together on the couch, watching the news anchors scramble to catch up with what the people had already decided. Elisa's phone buzzed all night. Texts from old students, emails from advocacy groups, an invitation from a university to speak. Her story wasn't ending, it was only beginning. She turned to Jamari. "You think it'll last?" He shrugged. "If we make it." That night, Elisa fell asleep for the first time in weeks without replaying the sound of pavement in her head. She dreamed not of the fall, but of the rise after it, of voices raised, of wheels rolling forward, of justice, finally, catching up to the truth. And for once, the city didn't just watch, it followed.